Hi, my name is Rahul. This is an introduction into the coastal zone regulation and management, which is part of our assignment for the land lab into on the second semester of our third year degree. So basically, what I'm here to give you is an intro into how coastal zone regulation and management is a very important part of a person, a government, a group of society that may lead to a better future for our coming generations. Our coastal areas are currently experiencing intense and sustained environmental pressure from a range of driving forces which have been increasing in intensity over many decades, I may say centuries. Responsible agencies are taking better ways of managing the causes and consequences of environmental changes process in coastal areas. But I think that is not enough. But we have to give our total focus into the coastal zone regulation and management far more than what we have been doing for the past few decades. So governments are now committed to the policy goal of sustainable development, which may lead to a better coastal zone regulation and management. But the fulfillment of sub-goal of sustainable utilization of coastal resources via integration and management is likely to prove to be an especially difficult task, basically because the population and the overpollution. Any successful strategy to control this will have to encompass all the elements of management, from planning, design, successful strategic placements of resources, and better city planning. So all these have to encompass on if we have to do a better job in management of our coastal resources. It also requires an interdisciplinary, scientific and operational approach, combined with a more flexible and participatory institutional structure and emphasis to account for multiple stakeholders, including private and public, and their resource demands, the different resource demands of these stakeholders. So the importance of historical, socio-economic, cultural, and ethical context should also be more fully recognized. We can use analytics to do that, to study the past patterns and develop our strategy accordingly. Taking this into consideration on one hand, on the other hand, what we have to do is the main coastal environmental problems are the natural threats to the land, such as cyclonic storms, tsunamis, and sea ingression, along with the soil erosion, because we are destroying the mangrove forests, basically, which is helping us to sustain the structure and integrity of coastal zones. So this ecological health destruction, habitat destruction, resource depletion, and exotic organism invasion, this can lead to a faster rate of coastal zone depletion. So to support the conservation of the environment, Constitution was amended by the 42nd Amendment Act 1976. Articles 48A and 51AG, these are the articles that were implemented. Sorry. Basically, so this what this articles helped was to create regulation zone across the coastal area, which spans to 7,500 kilometers long stretch of all the through the western coast of India. So development of buildings, tourism infrastructure, and other facilities is regulated in these coastal areas so that we could better control the coastal zones. And coastal stretches of creeks, bays, sea, rivers, and backwaters that are affected by the tidal actions of up to 500 meters from the high tide line and the land between the low tide line and the high tide line are coastal regulation zones. For this notification was issued on February 1991 under the EPA Act 1986 for the regulation of coastal areas and the activities on it by the Ministry of Environment and Forests. This was when the government of India notified coastal regulation zones for the first time, and there were 4 coastal regulation zones, and these 4 zones are different in the nature of how they are defined. So the first one would be the marine parks, reserve forests, wildlife habitats, and the second one would be the areas which we have already developed up till the coastal shoreline, and the third one will be the shoreline that passes through the rural and urban localities that are relatively undisturbed or do not belong to the first 2 category. And the fourth one is these are areas, coastal stretches in the island union territories of India, or the island areas that we have, including Lakshadweep, Andaman and Nicobar Islands. What we have done is that we have created the need for the coastal zone management, because the coastal zone is actually the first place where deterioration starts, and it ingresses over time, thereby depleting the area that we have that can be used as a landmass. Saving this is a very important part of being a coastal area. This coastal area is the most part of Indian boundaries divided by the coastal area, and the Indian Ocean includes large amounts of minerals, including products like cobalt, copper, manganese, and rare earth metals. Saving our coastal area and keeping the boundaries at a maximum available length is a part of strategic improvement and development, and keeping our resources within ourselves, within India's boundaries and reach. So coastal management includes these habitat conservations, because not only the minerals and deposits, but the aquatic life, the flora and fauna in the coastal zones are very important, and it should be saved. This is vital for the protection of coastal communities, and helps in flood prevention, sustainable development, etc. So Indian Ocean marine resources can act as a backbone of economic growth for India, and can support India to become a 5 trillion economy by 2022. But the blue economy through sustainable use of oceans has great potential for boosting our economic growth, even though 2020 is really a long shot. We do have our experiences, and if at all we develop sustainably, we have a chance of attaining this 5 trillion mark in the future. Coastal zone management will also contribute to the community building and inclusive governance for the adoption and application of comprehensive approaches to coastal management. So initiative to improve living conditions, such as climate tolerant and salinity resistant agriculture, water harvesting, recharging or storage infrastructure, and facilities to promote ecotourism, community-based small-scale mariculture, seaweed cultivation, aquaponics, would do value addition to other livelihood activities of people who just use the marine resources. So in that way we could give them an alternative income, and thereby saving part our ecosystem and coastal zones. So thus, the coastal initiatives to improve living conditions can have a really great impact into saving our coastal zones, because human beings are the ones who has the power to destroy or create better living conditions and better ecosystems and save their ecosystem that they live in. So initiatives to improve living conditions such as climate tolerance and as I mentioned all those points can project that marine fisheries resources that they use if they don't have an alternative livelihood can give us 4.4 metric tons of annual harvestable capacity if we plan to use other alternative methods other than fishing. So coastal management will give the fishery sector a boost through infrastructure growth. Petroleum and gas hydrates are principal energy resources available in Indian Ocean. So the oil extracted from offshore regions comprises many petroleum products, and these can also improve our coastal zone management because it gives us a perk, more money to put into the coastal zone management because we have got these resources from the coastal areas and the Indian Ocean. So we can use those resources to save our existing resources and coastal zone that we can have a symbiotic relationship between the coastal zone and the human interaction with those, and thereby having a symbiotic and a positive approach, we can save ecosystem, thereby replenishing our economic and oil needs, the petroleum needs, because Indian Ocean is the main source of petroleum energy for India, and which we used to export, and thereby giving us a boost in our economy. So basically coastal zone management is very important, and compliance with the directions of government and court and all the state and union territories of India should submit their proposals in due time, and we'll have to keep on amending those proposals, thereby we can improve our coastal zone management system and save it in time so that we can enjoy these resources for the near future and leave it for our coming generations. Thank you.
Hi everyone. Here we are going to discuss about Coastal Regulation Zone notification. The first notification was issued in the year of 1991, and the second one in 2011 and another in 2019. First we are going to discuss about the 1991 notification. Notification of 1991 was issued in order to protect and conserve the coastal environment. The notification of 1991 is applicable to coastal stretches of seas, bays, estuaries, creeks, rivers and backwaters. The notification mandated the state government and union territory to draw up coastal zone management plan to identify and classify coastal regulation zones within their respective territories. Powers were also vested under the notification of 1991 to the state government, union territories and local authorities to regulate developmental activities within the coastal regulation zones. Coastal areas under this notification is classified into 4 zones. They are CRZ1, CRZ2, CRZ3 and CRZ4. CRZ1. It included ecologically sensitive and important areas such as national parks, marine parks, sanctuaries and other important biologically sensitive areas. It also included the areas between high tide line and low tide line. In this zone, no constructions are allowed. It laid down prohibition on any construction within 500 meters of high tide line. Some relaxation is permitted for the exploration of natural gases and extraction of salt. Constructions are allowed for projects relating to Department of Atomic Energy or for carrying treated effluent and wastewater discharged into sea, facilities for carrying seawater for cooling purposes, etc. CRZ2. Developed areas which are developed up to or close to shorelines are classified under this category. CRZ2 allowed the construction and reconstruction of buildings subject to respective laws. It is mandated that the buildings should be consistent with surrounding landscape and local architectural style. Unauthorized structures are not allowed to construct under this zone. CRZ3. Areas that are relatively undisturbed and those which does not belong to CRZ1 or 2 comes under CRZ3 category. These will include coastal zones in rural areas, developed and undeveloped, and also areas within municipal limits or in other legally designated urban areas which are not substantially built up. This introduced no development zone up to 200 meters from high tide line. No new construction shall be permitted within this zone except the repairs of existing authorized structures. An authority designated by the state government or union territory administration may permit the construction of facilities for the local inhabitants. Construction of dwelling units between 200 to 500 meters of high tide line is permitted in this zone. CRZ-4. CRZ-4 covered the islands of Andaman Nicobar, Lakshadweep and other small islands which does not belong to CRZ-1, 2 or 3. Restrictions on construction within 200 meters of high tide line is imposed and prohibited the use of coral and sands from the beach and coastal water. Except for fishing and related activities, all other activities on the sea and tidal water will be regulated in this zone. There were several limitations in the 1991 notification. The notification introduced a uniform regulation for entire coastlines in India without considering the diversities. The notification introduced no clear procedure for obtaining the CRZ clearances. Post-clearance monitoring and enforcement mechanism was also not laid out. Measures or rules to check pollutions from land-based activities were not included in the notification. It also did not give due consideration to traditional communities like fishermen, slum dwellers, etc. Several amendments were made in CRZ 1991 notifications, which was consolidated and issued in CRZ 2011 notification. Notification of 2011 enshrined three main objectives: protection of livelihood of traditional fisher folk community, preservation of coastal ecology, and promotion of economic activity. The notification of 2011 considered certain activities as prohibited in CRZ. Setting up of new industries and expansion of existing industries are prohibited. Setting up and expansion of fish processing units, including warehousing, were prohibited, except hatchery and natural fish drying in permitted area. Notification of 2011 laid down the mandate for establishing the Coastal Zone Management Authority in state government and union territory with specific powers and functions. For the purpose of better implementation of the notification, National Coastal Zone Management Authority and State Coastal Zone Management Authority was established. The state government or the union territory CZMAs shall primarily be responsible for enforcing and monitoring of the notification, and to assist in this task, the state government and the union territory shall constitute district level committee under the chairmanship of district magistrate containing at least 3 representatives of the local traditional communities, including from fisher flocks. Notification put forward the preparation of Coastal Zone Management Plan CZMP has to be prepared by the CZMA of state government or union territory. Preparation of CZMP has to be with the fullest participation of local community. It is prepared by the coastal state government or union territories by engaging reputed and experienced scientific institutions or agency and in consultation with the concerned stakeholders. The draft CZMP shall be submitted by the state government or union territories to concerned CZMAs for appraisal, including appropriate consultation and recommendations in accordance with the procedures laid down in the Environmental Protection Act 1986. The notification of 2011 clearly laid down the procedure for obtaining clearance for permissible activities in separate forms. The project proponent shall apply with the certain documents seeking prior clearance under the CRZ notification to the concerned state or union territory Coastal Zone Management Authority. The concerned CZMA shall examine the above documents in accordance with the approved CZMP and in compliance with CRZ notification and make recommendation. Post-clearance monitoring is also mandated in this notification. Classification of CRZ has been renewed and changes have been introduced. Under the CRZ-1, areas that are ecologically sensitive and geomorphological features which maintain the integrity of the coast have been considered. Apart from those already included in the notification of 1991, habitats of various marine species have been included in the notification of 2011, including the turtle nesting grounds, horseshoe crab habitat, sea grass beds, etc. CRZ 2, 3 and 4 have been retained without much changes. Notification of 2011 has been able to address various issues specific to different areas which are ecologically sensitive. In order to review the notification of 2011, a 6-member committee was appointed under the chairmanship of Dr. Shailesh Nayak to examine the issues of the notification and to examine the errors and inconsistencies and procedural simplification. Dr. Shailesh Nayak committee submitted its report in 2015 after consultation with all the states concerned. The committee recommended many relaxation to the norms that was established by the 2011 notification. Here we are going to discuss some of the major recommendations of the committee. Reducing the no development zone. For the rural areas with a population density of over 2,161 persons per square kilometer, the non-development zone should be 50 meters from the high tide line. For the other areas, no-development zone should be 200 meters from the high tide line. Committee recommended for allowing housing infrastructure, slum development activities, ports, tourism, harbour and fisheries related activities in the CRZs. Tourism development activities should be permitted in non-development zones. Promotion of ecotourism based on the model of International Union for Conservation of Nature was also a recommendation of the committee. Housing with basic infrastructure to be provided to the communities living in the coastal areas. Economic and social development has to be happen in coastal communities, and committee recommended for new initiatives to be explored by the ministry to protect and conserve the coastal ecosystem. Based on the recommendation of the committee, a draft notification was submitted to the government. Subsequently, a new notification has been issued by central government on 18 January 2019, notified Coastal Regulation Zone Notification 2019. The notification of 2019 has been brought out pursuant to the recommendation of the committee and laid special focus on creating employment opportunities for the people in the coastal area. Apart from the conservation and protection of coastal environment, the notification also leads to the enhanced activities in the coastal region, thereby promoting economic growth, resulting in employment generation and better standard of living. As per the notification, CRZ has been classified and changes have been made to the existing classification. CRZ1 has been classified as CRZ1A, which are environmentally most critical. Intertidal zone, which is the area between low tide line and high tide line, have been classified as CRZ1B, whereas CRZ2 has remained without any classification. CRZ3 has been classified into two separate categories. Under CRZ3, rural have been classified into CRZ3A and CRZ3B. CRZ3A are densely populated rural area with a population density of 2,161 per square kilometer as per the 2011 census. Such areas shall have no development zone of 50 meters from the high tide line. CRZ3B are rural areas with a population density of below 2,161 per square kilometer as per 2011 census. Such areas shall continue to have no development zone of 200 meters from the high tide line. CRZ4 is classified as water area and further classified as CRZ4A, which is the area between low tide line up to 12 nautical mile on the seaward side, and CRZ4B as water area and bed area between low tide line at the bank of the tidal influenced water body to the low tide line on the opposite side of the bank, extending from the mouth of the water body at the sea up to the influence of tide. As per the CRZ 2011 notification, floor space index or floor area ratio had been frozen. Floor space index is the ratio between floor area of the building to the total size or total area of the land. In the CRZ 2019 notification, it has been decided to defreeze the same and permit the floor space index for the construction project. This will enable the redevelopment of these areas to meet the emerging needs and thereby implies a boost for the real estate sector. The procedure for CRZ clearance has been streamlined by the 2019 notification. Projects or activities which are located in the CRZ 1 and 4 shall be dealt with for CRZ clearance by the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change. The powers for clearance with respect to CRZ 2 and 3 have been delegated at the state level with necessary guidelines. The 2019 notification introduced boost for the tourism industry. As per the notification, a no development zone of 20 meters has been stipulated for all islands. For islands close to the mainland coast and for all backwater islands in the mainland, non-development zone of 20 meters has been stipulated. Pollution abatement has been accorded special focus in this notification. In order to address the pollution in coastal areas, treatment facilities have been made permissible in CRZ 1B areas, subject to necessary safeguard. As per the notification, defense and strategic projects have been excluded from the regulations. The 2019 notification has laid more emphasis on the development of coastal area. The notification has tried to address several issues regarding the land use. Creation of infrastructure for the development of coastal area has been focus of this notification. That's all about the coastal zone regulation notifications. Thank you.
Coastal Zone Management Authority. Coastal Zone Management Authority involves managing coastal areas to balance environmental, economic, human health and human activities. In order to manage, protect and balance these zones, there are some authorities in India at both central and state levels. The main central level organization is the authority called National Coastal Zone Authority, Management Authority. The authority constituted by central government has its principal focus on coastal environment. The main purpose for constitution of the authority is protection and improving the quality of the coastal environment and preventing, abating and controlling environmental pollution in the coastal areas. The authority have its
head office at New Delhi. The list of persons appointed at various designations are under the authority can be found in the official Gazette of India. Minimum number of persons required to initiate a valid meeting of the authority shall be 10. And the main functions and responsibilities of the organization is to coordinate. One of the main function is to coordinate the actions of state coastal zone management authorities and the union territory coastal zone management authority under the Environmental Protection Act and the rules made thereunder or under any other law which is retailable to the object of the said Environmental Protection Act, to review the cases involving violations of the provisions of the EPA and the rules made under either suo moto or the basis of complaint made by individual or body or organization, and issue directions for the directions wherever necessary under Section 5 of the Environmental Protection Act. To make specific, other power is to make specific recommendation to the central government after examining the proposals for changes of modification in clarification of coastal zone areas in the coastal zone management plans received from the state and union territory zone management authorities. File complaints under Section 19 of the Environmental Protection Act in cases of non-compliance of direction issued by it. Another responsibility is to inspect the fact
My topic is Island Protection Zone. Coastal spaces have not always been a prime property. For a long time, there was no pressing need for formal protection of coastal areas. Only in 1991, using the powers vested by the Environment Protection Act of 1986, the central government passed the Coastal Regulation Zone Notification. The Coastal Regulation Zone Notification was enacted in order to regulate the activities within 500 meters of the high tide line in coastal areas of the Indian mainland and the islands, and to strike a balance between the local livelihoods and the industrial or urban development. As we have seen, the Coastal Regulation Zone Notification was implemented in 1991. Through the course of its implementation, many strengths and weaknesses of this notification were revealed. In 2005, the Ministry of Environment and Forest initiated a review of the Coastal Regulation Zone, which ultimately leads to a new notification which was passed in 2011. The new Coastal Regulation Zone Notification 2011 restricted itself to governing only the mainland of India. At the same time, the two island groups, that is the Andaman and Nicobar Island Group and the Lakshadweep Islands, were placed under the purview of a separate notification called the Island Protection Zone Notification. The rationale governed for the separation of coastal areas on the mainland from the island's coastal environment was the unique nature of the island environment and the social structure, which required a different strategy from the mainland. These rich island systems with their unique social and cultural history are vastly different from the coastal areas of the mainland. As such, they deserve to be given special attention to preserve their ecological treasures while at the same time providing for a sustainable development of its people. Now we will see what is the aim of Island Protection Zone Notification. The basic aim is to prevent the uncontrolled and unregulated development in sensitive coastal ecosystems of the island. Second one is to provide livelihood security to local communities such as fisherfolk and tribals. The third aim is to protect the unique ecosystem found in the islands. Next one is that to promote sustainable development using scientific principles. The last purpose was to make provisions for infrastructure for the existing traditional and fishing communities, natural disaster rehabilitation, and for tourism. Next we will see what is the difference between this Island Protection Zone Notification and the Coastal Regulation Zone Notification. The Coastal Regulation Zone Notification applies only to the mainland coast of India, while the Island Protection Zone Notification applies to the islands of Andaman and Nicobar and the Lakshadweep Islands. Although both this notification classify coastal areas into 4 regulation zones, the Island Protection Zone Notification additionally allows for smaller islands to be governed by a new framework, that is Island Level Management Plans, which covers under its scope the regulation of activities carried out across the entire island and not just the coastal areas. Compared to the Coastal Regulation Zone, the Island Protection Zone is more inclusive of traditional local human settlements and the fishing activities, and also makes more provisions for tourism related infrastructure development on the islands. The next portion is about the management strategies in Island Protection Zone Notification 2011. The management of this Island Protection Zone can be categorized into 2 types, which have varying restrictions on the activities and industries that can be set up or operated. These 2 type of categorization is that the Island Coastal Regulation Zone and the Integrated Island Management Plan, which are being set up for the environmental management of the islands of Andaman and Nicobar Islands respectively. Lakshadweep respectively. These two categorization, the Island Coastal Regulation Zone and the Integrated Islands Management Plan will be followed. So we have to move on to the main theme, Island Protection Zone Notification 2019, which relaxes the development norms in the islands compared to the notification of 2011, which stipulated a non-development zone of 200 meters from the high tide line for all islands. This new notification brings norms for Andaman and Nicobar Islands at par with the coastal regulation zone, close to the mainland and backwater islands, where the non-development zone is only 20 meters from the high tide line has been stipulated. It included easing floor area ratio in coastal urban areas and the slashing the non-development zone is densely populated coastal rural areas to 50 meters from the high tide line as compared to the 200 meters earlier. The legal changes in this new notification are aligned with the Niti Aayog's proposal for holistic development in the islands, which is being taken forward under the guidance of the Island Development Agency. Now we will see the features of the Island Protection Zone Notification 2019. It allows for eco-tourism activities like mangrove walks, tree huts and nature trails in Island Coastal Regulation Zone 1A. This notification also allows for the construction of roads on stilts by reclaiming land in exceptional cases for defense installations, public utilities or strategic purposes in eco-sensitive zones. These were not allowed under the notification of 2011, which only permitted pipelines, transmission lines, trans-harbor links in the eco-sensitive zones. The new notification also allows a number of new activities in the intertidal zone between the low tide line and the high tide line. This includes the land reclamation and bunding for foreshore facilities like ports, harbors, jetties, wharves, quays, ceilings, etc. Transfer of the hazardous substances from ships to ports, manual mining of atomic minerals and mining of sand with permission from local authorities in non-eco-sensitive sites. Finally, we will see what are the concerns related with this notification, this new notification of 2011. The notification relaxes development norms in the islands compared to the notification of 2011, which stipulated a non-development zone of 200 meters from the high tide for all islands. This brings the norms for Andaman and Nicobar at par with the coastal regulation zone norms for other islands close to the mainland and backwater islands, where a non-development zone only 20 meters from the high tide line has been stipulated. Only the pipelines, transmission lines, trans-harbor links to be laid in the eco-sensitive zones were permitted. Now, road construction is too allowed. That's all from my part about the topic of Island Protection Zone.
The topic assigned to me, Island Coastal Regulation Zone and Integrated Island Management Plan. The Island Protection Zone consists of a specific area on the Indian island like Andaman and Nicobar Island and all island of Lakshadweep along with the territorial waters of both these islands. The IPZ is categorized into two types. First one is Island Coastal Regulation Zone, which falls under the big island of Andaman and Nicobar, and the second one is Integrated Island Management Plan, all island of Lakshadweep and small island of Andaman and Nicobar Island. The coastal structures of ICRZ are classified into four zones: ICRZ 1, ICRZ 2, and 3 and 4, like etc. Basically, these four zones have their own restricted and permitted areas, depend on the land basis. and also which do not have any exceptions in certain activities. The first integrated coastal regulation zone areas that are ecologically sensitive and geomorphological features which play a role in the maintaining the integrity of the coast. These are the list of the these are the list falls under the integrated coastal regulation zone. And also there are permitted and restricted under ICRZ 1. There are certain prohibitions in the IPZ which do not have any exception, as I said earlier. Mining of sand from in and around the nesting and breeding grounds of endemic and endangered species. Disposal of solid waste including fly ash, industrial waste, medical waste, non-biodegradable waste and like etc. Construction of shore protection works. And also following are the other prohibited activities, and these activities have a few exceptions. In this I have not describing about the exceptions: industry, mining, oil and hazard substance, groundwater and land reclamation, etc. Integrated Coastal Regulation Zone 2, the areas that have been developed up to or close to the HTL explanation, developed areas refer to that area with the existing municipal limit or in other existing legally designated urban areas which is substantially built up and has been provided with drainage and approach road and other infrastructure facilities such as water supply and sewage mains. And also these zones have certain prohibited activities which ICRZ2 areas for which now have exceptions can be made. Concession of shore protection hard concessions on the seaward side of the coral mangroves, mining of sand from in and around nesting and breeding grounds of endemic and endangered species, and the prohibited activities falls under this zone. And these activities have a few exceptions also: industry, groundwater, land reclamation, mining, oil and hazard substance, port and harbour, construction, waste management, fish processing, etc. And the third zone, areas that are relatively undistributed and do not belong to either ICRZ1 or ICRZ2. These include coastal zone in rural areas as well as within the municipal limit and in other designated urban areas which are not substantially built up. And the prohibited activities falls under this zone: mining of sand from in and around nesting and breeding ground of endemic and endangered species, disposal of untreated sewage, disposal of solid waste including fly ash, industrial waste, medical waste, non-biodegradable waste, and other prohibited activities as listed below, and which have a few exceptions that may be allowed on a case by case basis: industry, groundwater, land reclamation, and etc. And the fourth zone, this zone also includes the water area of the tidal influenced water body, starting from the mouth of the water body till as far as influence of tide exists up till areas that have a salinity concentration of at least 5 parts per thousand during the dry season of the year. The water area consists from the low tide line to 12 nautical miles on the seaward, almost 22 kilometers. Details of activities regulated in the ICRZ4. There are certain prohibitions in this zone: destruction of coral, mining of sand from in and around coral areas, concession of shore protection work, no pollution from oil and gas exploration and drilling, mining, boathouse, etc. The IPZ also clearly states that there should be no restriction on traditional fishing and allied activities undertaken by the local communities. This is the one main important point. There have been no restriction under the traditional fishing and allied activities undertaken by the local communities, and also activities impinging on the sea and tidal influence water bodies should be regulated, including ports and harbour and offshore developmental activities, to ensure that the above prohibition are enforced. The following set of activities are prohibited, with specific exceptions which may be approved on a case-by-case basis: port and harbors, mining, etc. And finally, the Integrated Island Management Plan, which falls under the small islands of Andaman Nicobar and also Lakshadweep. Integrated Island Management Plan are developed for the implemented on the smaller island of the Union Territories. The plan is meant to address vulnerability to human life and property and indicate suitable areas that are safe for locating house, infrastructure, and the like, and incorporate appropriate safeguard measures to protect the life and property of the local communities and other infrastructure from natural hazard. Integrated island management plan are to include all present and future development conservation and preservation scheme with a time frame of 10 years. And integrated island management plan are applicable to all island of Andaman and Nicobar apart from the ones falling under ICRZ, all island of Lakshadweep, as we said earlier. Other activities in these islands are their aquatic areas are regulated, and IIMP should include, among other things, the areas indicating all the existing and proposed development, conservation and preservation schemes within 10 years, homes, infrastructure projects such as school, market, hospital and public facilities, etc. Developmental activities in these islands are included in the Integrated Island Management Plan in accordance with the rules, regulation and building by laws of local town and country planning for the time being in the force of island. The guidelines for preparing Integrated Island Management Plan provide clear instructions on the various elements that should be incorporated into this plan and become a part of the island management. There are certain elements: connectivity on the island, disaster management and relief structure, protection of natural resource, regulation of fishing, construction, repair of buildings, planning of for energy needs, resource. Connectivity on the island. All existing roads should be strengthened as they are critically for purpose of livelihood, communication, rescue, relief and evacuation measures during natural hazards. And disaster management and relief structure. Very necessary provision should be made in the Integrated Island Management Plan for relocation and rehabilitation of the people displaced due to natural disasters like cyclone, tsunami, etc. Protection of natural resources. The beach should be protected and no developmental activity should be permitted there. Regulation of fishing. Regulation on fishing. There should be no restriction with regard to traditional fishing by local communities, including installation of fish aggregating device as recommended by the island administration. And the construction, the integrated management plan should include the areas under habitation and make plans for future developmental needs. The homes or infrastructure of the local communities which exist at the time of preparation of plan should not be displaced repairing of existing buildings or infrastructure, including reconstruction activity should be allowed. Planning for energy needs. Emphasis should be given to use non-conventional energy resources, especially wind, solar and tidal energy, desalination, water recycling, etc. So finally, resorts. There is no mention of beach resorts in the section of IPZ which are discussed in Integrated Island Management Plan. However, Annexure 3 of the IPZ list guidelines for the development of beach resorts or hotels is in designated areas in ICRZ, Regulation Zone 2, 3 and also Integrated Island Management Plan. Thank you.
My topic is Coastal Aquaculture Authority. The Coastal Aquaculture Authority Act of 2005 came into force from 22nd December 2005. It is an act which deals with the sustainable development of aquaculture activities in India, the assurance of aquatic resources for future generations. The whole structure and working of the authority are provided under the Act. It provides who can be the members of the authority. The members of the authority are also provided with the powers and privileges for their effective functioning. It also provides for the power of the central government with regard to the functioning of the authority. The government is empowered to make guidelines for the implementation of the functions provided to the authority. The significance of the aquaculture are increasing population and illness. The increasing demand for seafood cannot be denied. The increasing use of sea animals for consumption has increased the tension because many of the species are in the threat of overexploitation. The statistics are given by Our World in Data releases that about 33% of the global fish stocks are overexploited. The two major factors causing an increase in demand for seafood is as follows. Increasing population. The World Population Prospectus 2019 highlights report was published by the United Nations Department of Economic and Social Affairs. It reveals that India is supposed to add about 273 million people till 2050. It also reveals that India is thus supposed to surpass China in terms of the most populous country. These statistics are shocking. The continuously increasing population makes it necessary to think about consumption of such a large population. The consumption of seafood is affected by the increase in population. And the second significance was illness. The demand for animal protein is increasing because of increasing illness. The richness of the protein in seafood is the need for the cure of the disease. Fish is a rich source of omega-3 fatty acids. The consumption of a fish is beneficial for the cure of diseases like cancer, high blood pressure, arthritis, and other heart diseases. The immune system of the body is essential in curing diseases. The strengthening of the immune system can be better done by consumption of seafood. Protection from the diseases from COVID-19 can also be prevented from strong immune system. The presence of high antioxidants in fish and other seafood is beneficial for strengthening of the immune system. These facts show that the consumption of seafood is going to increase to be in demand day by day. But this increase in demand for the seafood is dangerous for the aquatic of the seas and the coastal environment. The sea animals are exploited faster than they can reproduce. Thus, the sustainable development of coastal areas is necessary. The significance of aquaculture activities responsible for the coastal environments. Aquaculture is the process of cultivating aquatic animals for human consumption in a sustainable way. The movements like the Blue Revolution plays an important role in focusing our attention on the need and significance of these activities. Now, when we consider about the Coastal Aquaculture Authority, the authority or the act was enacted by the Parliament of India on 23rd June 2005. It came into force through notified white gazetted notification dated 22nd December 2005. The Act implements the mechanism of aquaculture in India. It provides for the establishment of an aquaculture authority. The term authority for the purpose of the Coastal Aquaculture Authority Act 2005 is defined under Section 2(1)(a) of the Act. The authority here means the Coastal Aquaculture Authority that is established for the purpose of enforcement of the Act. The authority implements the provisions provided in the Act under the control of the central government of India. The Act provides a detailed explanation of the establishment, members, organs, etc. of the authority. Head office of the authority is in Chennai, Tamil Nadu. When we talk about the main objectives of the authority, the objective behind the introduction of the Act is the need of aquaculture activities in the country. The Act aims at the following: to regulate the aquaculture activities in the country, to control the coastal environment destruction, to produce more protein-rich food for the consumption of the increasing population, to provide a livelihood to humans in commercial aquaculture activities, to increase the existing species of the aqua animals and protecting the coastal environment, to utilize the aquatic and coastal land in a sustainable way of ensuring enough resources for our future generation. These are the main objectives of the enactment of the Act. The implementation of these objectives is done by the measures taken in the direction by the authority. Now, when we consider about the functions and the powers of the authority, Section 11 of the Act provides for the functions to be performed by the authority. The forming rules and regulations. The main purpose of the authority is to make regulations. The Act aims at establishing and operating aquaculture farms in India. The rules and regulations for the operation of these farms are to be introduced by the authority. Conducting inspections, registering farms, are the main forming rules and regulations done by the authority. The other functions for the authority by the central government are prescribed under Rule 5 of the notification issued by the Ministry of Agriculture of the central government on 22nd December 2005. The functions prescribed by the government are provided below. The authority is to check and ensure that area converted for the construction of the coastal aquaculture farms shall not fall under any of the following categories like agricultural land, salt pan lands, mangroves, wetlands, forest lands, and land for common purposes in the village, lands for public purposes, national parks and sanctuaries, etc. It has to conduct surveys on the entire coastal area of the India. It is its function to give recommendations on the strategies to be adopted for the development and benefit of the coastal environment to the central and state governments. Conducting investigations and studies for the purpose of the perseverance of the coastal environment. Making policies for the use of eco-friendly technologies. Conducting sustainable utilization of the coastal areas programs through media or other modes of communication. Forming of the committees, subcommittees, working groups, subgroups for the purpose of the effective administration of the coastal areas, the determination of pay and allowances of the employees of these committees are working groups. These determination of the process of leave and all other terms and conditions are also be taken by the authority itself. Recommending the central government for the amendment of its guidelines for making it more adaptable to changing technologies and new farming practices. And the final, we can see that issue the directions to the owner of the farms for the implementation of the coastal environment friendly operations. The impact of the following activities on the coastal environment is to be minimized by the issue of direction. Now, when we talk about the powers of the central government is provided with some powers of the regulation and implementation of the Act. The powers provided into the Act are provided below. Section 3 of the Act provides power of the central government with following powers. Issue guidelines for the purpose of the regulation of the coastal activities by the authority. Such guidelines are to be issued to provide the authority with its functions that are necessary for the regulation of the aquaculture activities. Another important power by the Act is to take necessary measures for protection of the environment. The government is to ensure that the aquaculture activities should not violate the coastal environment of the country. Responsible coastal activities are to be ensured. The measures to protect the coastal environment as well as the livelihood of the people are to be taken by the government through these guidelines. Section 24 of the Act provides government with the power to make rules for the implementation of the provisions of the Act. The rules made by it shall cover the following matters related to guidelines issued for the authority as per Section 3 of the Act, related to the salaries and allowance payable to the members of the authority, related to the terms and conditions of services of the members of the authority. Section 11(2) of the Act provides the power of the authority to remove any aquaculture farm if it is satisfied that operation farm is harmful to the coastal environment. It provides that if an aquaculture farm is removed by the authority, then the authority has to appoint a one-member committee for the payment for the compensation to the workers of the farm. Such compensation is decided by one-member authority as a settlement between the workers and the management of the farm. Such one-member authority is permitted to perform some powers as a district magistrate for the completion of its function. These powers are to be decided by the central government through making the rules as per Section 24(2)(b) related to the another function is related to the matter of entering any coastal aquaculture land, pond, pen or enclosure. These rules related to form for applications for registration of farms and the processing fees are to be made by the government. And These are many things which will be done by the central government. Section 23 of the Act provides central government with the power of removing such provisions of the Act which creates difficulty for the implementation of the provisions of the Act. Such removal was to be made by publishing in the official gazette. But such power was only valid for the period of 2 years from the commencement of the date. Thus, this power is not valid to the government from now. So as a conclusion, we can say that the need and importance of aquaculture is increasing demand for the seafood consumption by increasing the population in the country. The Coastal Aquaculture Authority Act 2005 is a comprehensive legislation regulating the aquaculture activities. The Act deals with the introduction of the Coastal Aquaculture Authority for implementing the provisions and objective behind the Act. The Act is very comprehensive to cover necessary aspects of sustainable aquaculture activities and environmental protection. But the changing time is changing and introducing new environmentally friendly technologies. So regular surveys, studies and other measures are necessary to keep aquaculture activities more updated and inconsistent with the development of the environment. The regular recommendations from the authority for the introduction of new agricultural practices and technology is the sole of the objective of the Act. The updated issuing of guidelines by the central government on the recommendation of the authority is the benefit of the Act. And these are all about the Coastal Aquaculture Authority. And thank you.
Respected Madam and my dear friends, a very good morning to all. I am going to present a very important judgment of Supreme Court of India, which has been crucial in the protection and conservation of India's coastal environment. These judgments not only express deep concern about India's coastal environment but also urgent need to protect it. The three judgments by Supreme Court, which are Indian Council for Enviro-Legal Action versus Union of India. The citation is 1996, 5 SEC 281. Second is S. Jagannath versus Union of India, 1997, 2 SEC 87, and Vamiga Island versus Union of India, 2013, 8 SEC 760. In the first case, that is Indian Council for Enviro-Legal Action case, the amendments were made by the central government in 1994 to relax certain prohibitions which were challenged, and the question also before the Supreme Court was about not finalizing the coastal zone management plans despite the passage of statutory period for 1 year. The Honorable Supreme Court in this case directed the central and state government to finalize the coastal zone management plans. On the non-issue of non-enforcement of laws, the court observed that the enactment of law but tolerating its infringement is worse than not enacting the law at all. The court also found two of the 1994 amendments that reduced the no development zone to be illegal. The direction was also given to central government to consider the constitution of the coastal zone management authorities at national and state level for effective implementation of 1991 notification. In S. Jagannath versus Union of India, it was where the issue before the Supreme Court was about the adverse impacts of coastal pollution caused by non-traditional and unregulated prawn farming. In this case, it was held that the purpose of coastal regulation zone notification is to protect the ecologically fragile coastal areas and to safeguard the aesthetic qualities and uses of the sea coast. The setting up of modern shrimp aquaculture farm right on the sea coast is per se hazardous and it bound to degrade the marine ecology, coastal environment, aesthetic uses of the sea coast. The court, however, excluded the traditional system of aquaculture from this prohibition. In Vamiga Island versus Union of India case, the issue before the court was whether certain properties on an island in the Vembanad backwaters of Kerala should have been categorized as Coastal Regulation Zone 1, which restrict its building or expansion in Kerala's Coastal Zone Management Plan. The court held that the properties had been correctly categorized and that the owner had violated the law by constructing on these properties. The court upheld the High Court's decision to demolish the illegal structures. So, from these judgments, from the review of all these judgments, it is possible to identify at least three principles that should guide environmental decision making by executives. First one is protection and conservation of our environment is the paramount objective of Indian environmental laws, and decision making process under these should support the furtherance of this objective. In Indian Council for Enviro Legal Action case, the court assessed the government's amendment to allow any construction within the no development zone, that is area within 200 meters from high tide line. The court invalidated this amendment, holding that no suitable reason has been given which can persuade it to hold the enactment of such proviso was necessary in the larger public interest, and the exercise of power under the said proviso will not result in large-scale ecological degradation and violation of Article 21 of the citizen living in those areas. On the second amendment that relaxed the non-development zone for tidal waters from 100 meter to high tide line to 50 meter, the court did not see any reason to support a blanket reduction. It concluded that the reduction had been done for extraneous reasons. The court held that we are unable to conclude that the said amendments had been made in larger public interest and is valid. This amendment is therefore contrary to the object of Environmental Act and has not been made for any valid reason and is therefore held to be illegal. In S. Jagannath, the court held that keeping with the international commitments and the greater national interest, the Government of India and the Government of coastal states are under legal obligation to control marine pollution and protect the coastal environment. The court also highlighted that any activity which has the effect of degrading the environment cannot be permitted. Apart from that, the right of the fisherman and the farmer living in the coastal areas to eke their living by the way of fishing and farming cannot be denied to them. In Vamiga Island, the court supported the High Court's judgment on the coastal zone management plan categorization, as the direction was issued by a High Court taking into consideration the large public interest and to save Vembanad Lake, which is an ecologically sensitive area, so proclaimed nationally and internationally. Vembanad Lake is presently undergoing severe environmental degradation due to increased human intervention, as already indicated. Recognizing the socio-economic importance of this water body, it has recently been scheduled under vulnerable wetlands to be protected and declared as critically vulnerable coastal area. It affirmed the High Court's order of demolition of illegal structure based on previous decision of Supreme Court in Piedad de Filomena Gonsalves versus the state of Goa, wherein court had held construction raised in violation of coastal regulation zone cannot be lightly condoned. The second principle is environmental decision making must benefit from expert knowledge and inputs, and for any decision which is at variance with such knowledge, the decision maker should provide clear reasons. The third principle, the government arrogate to itself unbridled discretionary power to dilute environmental norms. In the absence of proper guidance on how to exercise such power, the cost to the environment and the people depend on it could be very high. As we witness an escalation in environmental conflicts, a blatant disregard for statutory processes, and a deliberate move towards diluting environmental norms, it is instructive to look back at judicial precedent that invalidated previous government attempts to dilute coastal regulation. The Honorable Supreme Court had brought no tolerance for any kind of violation in ordering the demolition of flats at Marido municipality. The Supreme Court has shown its iron-handed approach. In Kerala State Coastal Zone Management Authority versus State of Kerala 2019 3 KHC 9 SC, it was held that the permission granted was illegal and no such development activity could have taken place in prohibited zone. Even though the area was changed into coastal CRZ2 from CRZ3 area, it does not make any consequences and construction made was held to be illegal. With this, I conclude. Thank you.